Thank you very much, Acting Deputy President. I rise to speak on this matter of public importance, and I do so with a great deal of pride. And I'd like to just comment on a couple of comments that Senator Brown has just made in her contribution, and I really take issue with Senator Brown and the particularly disgraceful comment that she made that ministers in our government couldn't wait to hand over their job. I think that's a shocking reflection on the commitment of our government and ministers, including myself when I was the Assistant Minister for Disability Services, Housing and Social Services, and I did that job with a great deal of pride, and I did it with a great deal of honour. And I was very sad when I was not able to continue as the Assistant Minister, and for Senator Brown to reflect on ministers in that way I really do think that she should come back into the chamber and withdraw that comment. And when I was the Assistant Minister, Madam Acting Deputy President, I was incredibly proud to stand up for people with a disability, to stand up for their families and their carers and everyone in their world, to make sure that they had a better life, that they could be the very best that they could be. And one of the most significant reforms that happened when I was the Assistant Minister was our reform of the Special Disability Accommodation Allowance, which wasn't being included in people's packages. So people were being left in a situation where they could not go out and seek accommodation because they didn't know what sort of resources they had, and that just seemed to be completely the wrong way around, and we fixed that. And I don't think I probably had a better day as the Assistant Minister when I joined Kirby Littley and her family when she moved into her new home in Belmont in Geelong, and there was such a sense of joy. And we are seeing that joy all around the nation. These are people who previously had nowhere to live, whose parents and families were racked with grief, not knowing what would happen to their children. And now, through the SDA, as but one example, which supports those who have the highest needs, around about 6% of all people who have a disability, this is absolutely transformative. So I say I'm incredibly proud of the work that we are doing in delivering the NDIS. And that is not to say, and I do acknowledge the contribution of Senator Steele-John, that is not to say that there have not been problems. Yes, there have been problems. There have been challenges. There have been too much bureaucracy at times, but our government, led by our Prime Minister, has been single-minded in our determination to improve the NDIS, to make sure Australians with a disability get what they deserve by way of support and services and funding, and to ensure that as a nation that we can hold our heads up high, because this is a world-first social insurance scheme. And I want to pay tribute to all Australians with a disability, their parents, like Senator Hughes, and their carers, and of course all the workers in the disability sector who play such an important role. And I will put on record that before the election, it was very disappointing that the current member for Corangamite, Ms Coker, drove around in a trailer saying how she was going to put the heart back in the NDIS, and it was a very embarrassing and frankly low political act to be trying to use people with a disability to make a point, obviously attacking me. And I think, and I regret today, that we cannot celebrate with a sense of bipartisanship what we are doing on both sides of the chamber. And on the point that Senator Steele-John has made about the scheme that was being rushed, and yes, it was rushed, it basically began on the 1st of July 2013, 1 year before it was meant to, and it was rushed because the then Prime Minister Julia Gillard wanted to roll the scheme out a few months before the federal election. And I want to correct a very important statement that Senator Steele-John made. There was absolute bipartisanship. Tony Abbott, when he was the opposition leader, and the Liberal opposition was absolutely and utterly committed to rolling out the NDIS, and I want to put that very strongly on the record and to correct what Senator Steele-John said. Of course, we are here because there is more politicking over the NDIS, and I do very strongly reject the premise for this MPI, and that is that the Morrison government has always been committed to fully funding the NDIS, and it's obviously very clear that the Labor Party does not understand, except the member for Barton, I do acknowledge her concession, that this is a demand-driven system. The money is there and it is provided for so that it can be drawn down as required. And that, unfortunately, is the inconvenient truth which undermines the motion before the Senate today. So what we are seeing is an increase in the NDIS budget as it is rolled out across the nation from $13.3 billion in 2018-19 to $18 billion in 1920, and of course, full scheme $22 billion, which is no less than what Labor would commit to, of course, if it was in government. So, as I say, this is just some really regrettable politicking. The NDIS under our government has evolved into the largest and fastest social reforms, one of the most significant social reforms in our history. There are now nearly 340,000 Australians benefiting from the NDIS, and of course, since as at the 31st of December, there are now another 134,000 people receiving disability supports for the first time, 40% of the total number of participants. So we are rolling out the NDIS at a very rapid rate. We're also listening, and when things are not working, and that was certainly the experience when I was the Assistant Minister, we are listening and fixing the things that are not working, such as lifting the staff cap. And so we certainly took very strong action to lift the staff cap. The COAG NDIS quarterly report found that the average wait time for children aged up to 6 years to meet NDIS access had reduced from 43 days in June 2019 to an average of less than 3 days in December 2019. So yes, there was a problem with children waiting too long, but we got in there and we fixed it. And we have worked very hard to reduce the waiting time on the plans, and we've also worked very hard to reduce issues such as when someone wants to amend their plan, and of course when someone wants to access assistive technology without going through having to get a number of quotations. So lots of bureaucracy which hampered the NDIS at an earlier stage. Our government is now tackling, of course, under our new minister, very much led by the Prime Minister, and we are doing that with a great deal of pride. But as I say, Madam Acting Deputy President, through schemes like the SDA, we are changing lives, and we are making the most substantial contribution by way of committing $22 billion at full scheme rollout by 2021-22. That money is there. That money is provided for in the budget. And just look at the converse argument. Imagine if we did not provide more money than was required in the budget. There would be a shortfall. So being a demand-driven scheme, if there wasn't a surplus amount of money in the provision for NDIS drawdowns, then there would be a shortfall. Our government is not going to allow that to happen. And as I say, that money is there. It can be drawn down when required, and the faster the scheme rolls out, the more quickly the drawdown occurs. So this is one of the many ways in which we are supporting Australians, and we're doing it, Madam Acting Deputy President, because we are running our budget responsibly. We are making sure that through 29 years of continued economic growth, low unemployment, lower taxes, fixing Labor's mess that we inherited, its spiral of debt and deficit, that we are running the budget responsibly, and we are doing so that we can stand up for so many Australians who have a disability and provide all the other services that make Australians' lives all the better. Thank you.